From a territory to a state, Nebraska is celebrating its 150th birthday this year, and K&B Ag will be looking back throughout the year at the farmers, ranchers, technology, and more, which grew the panhandle of Nebraska to what it is today. The roads which paved the way across Nebraska started out as explorers' trails, then wagon trails, and finally the railroads. It was the railroads that changed everything, Bern Miller, Bridgeport native and history enthusiast, says.
So this changed everything because now you don't need the covered wagon trail taking things up to Deadwood. Now you could use the Burlington Northern Railroad as it went north and up towards Deadwood.
The trains of the 1900s were driven by steam, and for steam you need water. The necessity of water for the trains played an important part in where towns grew in the Panhandle.
There really started to be a lot of people moving out here because they didn't have to come out in covered wagons, although some of them still did. They didn't have to because of the railroad. And then once they got here, the railroad helped out a lot. You hear stories of how people, they had coal stoves back then, and they'd run out of coal. And the railroad would actually donate coal during those really cold winters so that they could get by. So the railroad really was very helpful.
The railroads not only cut east to west, but north to south, where goods were shipped to Deadwood, South Dakota. Plus, the settlers who had come by wagon before were now arriving by train.
It's really interesting that you'll find out that a lot of the towns out here are 15 miles apart. And that reason for that is because of the railroad. As they came along from back east, the trains had to stop and get water. So they had to have a station, and they had to have a water tower. The train could go about 15 miles before it needed water. So then they would make a water tower, a station, and 9 times out of 10, a town would develop around that tower.
While the railroads were often helpful as they wanted to see towns grow up around their depots, Miller says the industry did create something called speculating, which wasn't always a good deal.
There was a lot of money made on speculators. There was a lot of speculators who would try to buy up land where they knew the railroad was going to be going, because they knew that the minute the railroad would build a station somewhere, the land values would increase. So I think sometimes that created problems. So
Miller says the end of the golden age for railroads came not long after the car was invented. Roads were created, and after World War II, President Eisenhower created an interstate and highway system, opening up travel to automobiles for the public and trucks to haul goods to and from places. With KNB.TV News, I'm Chabela Guzman, and 150 Years of Nebraska Agriculture is sponsored by Kelly Bean, proud to be a tri-state region tradition for 90 years.